So all the organizations write individual proposals to get those dollars. So at that point, they're all competing because the fund is not going to give it to everybody. So from the very beginning, you create a competitive environment because now they're competing for those dollars. So you're
Welcome to the IAAQLI 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we deep dive into the transformative impact of the work being done in Indianapolis Black communities. Get ready to be inspired by the incredible projects and organizations making a real difference in the lives of Indianapolis residents. And that conversation starts right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the IAAQLI 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we highlight the important things and impactful things that are happening in our community thanks to the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative. I'm your host, Aaliyah English, filling in for Samantha Douglas today, and with me I have the president and founder of InnoPower, an organization that is on the front line of economic and empowerment in Indianapolis. InnoPower's mission is to improve the quality of life for underrepresented communities by driving innovative entrepreneurship and workforce development. That's a lot, and that's very impactful. With me, I have President and Founder Emil Ekiyor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to focus laser because empowering the community is amazing, but we're going to focus in today on the Indy Biz Pass initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about the program and what it does and how it aligns with InnoPower's initiative?
Yeah, so in 2020, JP Morgan Chase did a research of the Indianapolis Black business environment. In that research, they came up with some clear takeaways about the gaps in the Indianapolis environment. A couple of things they said was only 27% of Black businesses understood where resources were. So there were a lot of resources, but how do I access these resources? A lot of businesses didn't understand that. The second thing was, in Indianapolis, we didn't have an organized ecosystem, meaning there were a lot of activities, it was just a lot of activities. It wasn't activities designed around a purpose. So we're doing all of these things because we want to achieve this. The third thing that we took away was a continuum of capital. So meaning the non-traditional forms of capital that can get into businesses. So the traditional forms of capital are, I need a loan, I go to a bank. The bank says, to get this loan, you have to have above a 670 credit score. Well, a lot of the businesses that were around didn't have that, so they can't get the traditional form of capital. So you needed more ways to be able to get capital to people who don't meet those thresholds. And in Indy, the report said we didn't have enough of that. So we saw that report, and it was right at the end of COVID, during COVID, and we saw a lot of businesses at that time that were trying to figure out, COVID has happened, I need a space, I don't have enough money to go to a co-working space. So we wanted to give them access to available co-working spaces because we also knew the co-working spaces after COVID were also struggling. So you give you an example like P30. The businesses were struggling, so the businesses can't afford to go pay full price. So how do we support the co-working spaces? How do we support the businesses? So we created the Indy Biz Pass to give access to co-working spaces at the end of COVID to say, let's give these Black businesses that are sole proprietors, $150,000 or less in revenue, access to a space so they can save money from going out and renting. So we pitched that to the Urban League and the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative to say, hey, here's our vision to do this, and we want to do 100 businesses a year to get access to co-working spaces, 3 co-working spaces, P30, Maven Space, and 16 Tech, where they can go in, they can have mailboxes there, they can use it for meeting rooms. So that was our vision, to do 100 a year and change it every year. After the first year, we saw of the 100, we exceeded 100. We had over 175 businesses apply. And we got a habit of not being able to say no. So we ended up taking 130. So at the end of the first year, we thought those 130 would move out and would bring a whole new 130. Well, those 130 didn't want to, they had saved money from rent because they had access to co-working spaces. And we also took for granted that everybody knew how to use one or were exposed to one. So the exposure increased their usage. So those 130 asked to stay. So we ended up keeping them, and then we brought in a whole new 130. So now in the end of the second year, we have 260 black businesses that are solopreneurs, 150K or less in revenue. And of those 260, 85% of them are women-owned. So that's kind of the thought process behind the initial our initial vision for Indie Biz Passes. Let's just give access. So as we gave access, we started saying, based on what the report said, these businesses had access, but now they wanted to know where the resources were. So we said, how do we start connecting them? We have the businesses as a part of our network. How do we make sure they're connected to the resources they need? Training, capital, advice, all of those things. So we didn't want to have individual meetings, gatherings. So we ended up creating a digital, what we call ecosystem, a virtual ecosystem that the businesses can go to and see the different resources available, programs, and they can connect to those resources. So initially that wasn't our thought process, but then as we had the business, now we had a network of businesses. Now we saw what the report was saying, but we actually saw it in reality now because we kept answering questions. So we built that ecosystem called the Indie Biz Pass as well to connect those businesses to available resources. So now we have 120 organizations uploaded into this virtual ecosystem that have, whether it's training, we have small businesses that have accounting services, but all these resources for black businesses, especially black solopreneurs who are young and trying to grow. And the data says 8 out of 10 black businesses that start shuts down in 15 months. So part of us is saying, how do we make sure they stay past those 15 months? So that's kind of how we started and where we are today.
How do you build a collaborative environment?
So that is the challenge. So if we've existed in a system, right, that has said, the funder says, here's what we want to fund. You write a proposal and tell us how you're going to spend this money and what you're going to do. So all the organizations write individual proposals to get those dollars. So at that point, they're all competing because the fund is not going to give it to everybody. So from the very beginning, you create a competitive environment because now they're competing for those dollars. So you eliminate a lot of collaboration, and that's been the way things have been. So you end up adapting to that as an organization. That's the way you operate, not because you don't want to collaborate. It's just the system you're operating in it. So today we're saying this: when you are operating in an under-resourced community anyways, there's never enough dollars to do it by yourself. So if you want to deliver excellence, you want to truly make a difference, right, and you know you have limited resources, it doesn't make sense to just go try to do it on your own. So part of today's world, right, where there are limited resources based on just the elimination of a lot of funding. So we say going forward, especially in Indianapolis, we have to throw away the old playbook. So we use this term, right, and people laugh about it, is, you know, we're in Indiana. Back in the day, the Bob Knight Indiana basketball offense was the thing. You got to pass the ball 15 times before you shoot. Today, everybody's shooting threes.
Yes.
If you run that Bob Knight offense today, people will look at you like, what are you doing? So we got to get rid of the Bob Knight offense, and we got to play the Steph Curry offense, right? And the Steph Curry offense is we have to collaborate. You have to understand you're in an environment that's under-resourced. There's not enough money. Mm-hmm. You're working with people who are trying to make it. They don't have money. So if you try to do it on your own, you might have small wins, but nothing great will happen. Hence, we haven't seen a lot of great things happen. So the times we're in today in Indianapolis, the next 10 years in Indianapolis, And we all see all these investments that are being made. There's so much opportunity, and we have to make up our minds that we want to prepare everybody to compete for these opportunities. If not, we would look back 10 years from now and so many people will be left behind. So the burden lies, or the onus lies, on a lot of the organizations who will do great work to understand that you cannot and you will not do great, great work and really make a difference if you try to do it alone. So that is the education process and the system that we have to change. A lot of times we think the system is from the outside, and a lot of it is, but there are things on the inside that folks have to make up their minds that we can't continue using that playbook. It's not going to lead to championships.
Yes. And what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So working together, it's creating a collaborative environment to help everybody win. And that's at the end of the day, we want everybody to win. Speaking of collaborative efforts, can you tell us a little bit about your partnership with IAAQLI and how that funding helped bring this vision to fruition? You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if you can give us a little bit more detail.
So a lot of times, if you have an idea, right, and there's no money to be made because you're doing it to support people and communities, and you want to pitch that idea, a lot of times it's so hard to do that. Because remember now, most of the time people tell you what they're going to fund, and then you, whether you like it or not, that's what you apply for. The Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative was different because we had an idea. There was no playbook. There was nothing to show that this has been done before. We said, hey, look, this is what we see. This is what we see in the research, and we think this can help small businesses, solopreneurs, get on their feet and not close in 16 months, right? And because of the new mechanism of the IAAQLI and their desire to be able to say, you know what, we'll give you a chance to prove your idea can work, right? Because of that, we were able to get the funding to do that, and 3 years later, not only have we used the funding to support the business owners, we've built one of the only digital ecosystems in the country, right? So if that funding was never around, if they never took time to really listen to innovative ideas or encourage that, then chances we probably won't be doing what we're doing right now.
And in light of partnerships, can you tell us a little bit about the other organizations and communities that you're working with to help sustain IndyBizPass and help keep this thriving and keep organizations and entrepreneurs growing?
So, like I said, the IndyBizPass, now that so initially it was the network of businesses and the co-working spaces. With the virtual ecosystem, we have 120 organizations onboarded on there. So right now, those organizations are sharing, hey, look, here's our calendar, our program. So 16 Tech, the Urban League Entrepreneurship Center, Indiana Black Expo, so many organizations are part of it now. So if you go to the IndyBizPass.com, you can see a lot of the organizations that are part of the ecosystem. So we say, in our case, we win because everybody wins. We win because we're able to communicate available programs, and businesses are coming to take advantage of those programs at mass, at scale. When that happens, good things happen. So we get joy because we like, man, they're winning, they're winning, they're winning, and they're winning. So that's kind of our mindset, is we pop bottles when people win and when people do their thing and when their programs are working.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about how the data has impacted the IndyBizPass and the initiative as a whole? Because we love numbers, businesses love numbers, but how important are they?
So here's the big thing that we are on. So the initial phase of saying, let's get these businesses together, solopreneurs, let's give them access to a space, access to have meetings and all of those things, and let's just help them make sure they don't shut down. Remember, this was after COVID. Mm-hmm. Today, the data point that we are really locked in on is Brookings Institute did a study in 2022. That study said Indianapolis has Central Indiana has 915 black businesses. Those 915 black employer businesses, meaning they have an employee. make up 3% of the employer businesses in the region. But black people make up anywhere from 17 to 22% in the region, depending on what you're looking at. If the number of black businesses was equivalent to the population, there will be 11,000. So think about this. Today we have 915 employers, so black businesses that have employees. Makes up 3%. If the number of black employer businesses was at 17 to 20%, that number won't be 915, it'll be 11,000. The economic impact for the region will be in the billions. So what we're saying to all of the organization, the entire community is, our goal should be, how do we go from 3% to 8%, 10% in the next 5 years, right? So everybody's coalesced. When you ask an organization, why are you doing the training you're doing? They'll say, we're doing this training because we're trying to increase the number of black employer businesses. Today, a lot of people say we're trying to increase the number of black businesses. Well, it's not about just having a business. It's about having the right kind of business and making money. Business is all about making money. And when you hire people, that means you're making money.
Yes.
Right? So how do we create more businesses that hire, right? And now that gives us something tangible to measure. So today we don't have tangible things to measure to say, are we actually improving the business environment for black businesses in Indianapolis? When you ask that question, we don't know. We can feel like it, but now when we have a goal like that, we'll say, we are improving because last year we were at 915 employer businesses. This year we're at 1,000. So we have more businesses hiring people. Then when we say, how do you do that? Here's how we do it. All of these organizations, training, capital. So you've activated the ecosystem. Today, we haven't done that. We have a lot of activities. There's a lot of energy, but where are we going to be in 5 years? So that's where we are now, and it's been a progression. We had to start with just, after COVID, let's stabilize things, and then today we're saying, now it's time to take off.
I love that. Speaking of that, just to elaborate on that a little bit more, can you tell us about your visions for the next phase of the Indie Biz Pass?
So the next phase, we set a goal, right? That goal is set to say, here's where we want to be as a region. We want to be at, we don't want to be the ones that set the goal. We want everyone to come together and set the goal. We want to be at 8 to 10%. We go ahead and do the projection, say, what does it look like at 8% if we had this many black businesses? Just hire one person. So there's a thing called, there's a movement called the Path to 1555, if you look it up, Path to 1555. In that movement, they say if 15% of black businesses in the country hire one person, there will be a $55 billion impact nationally. Just one person. So if you did that in Indianapolis, and we said, we want to go from 3% to 10% in the next 5 years, and we'll be so conservative and say, those businesses hire one person. So from 3%, the 915 right now, to 10%, that's an additional 1,000 businesses, give or take. Those 1,000 businesses hire one person, pay them $40K, right? The projections say that's almost like a $95 million annual impact to the economy. So those are the kind of things that we say we should be about, we should all be about, because now we're saying we're actually moving the needle. So that's the growth from the Bob Knight offense
to the Steph Curry.
to the Steph Curry offense.
The Golden State offense. Or a Pacer offense, now that they're there, they're all about sharing and sharing the wealth. So I love that. That's awesome. Well, they're telling me that we're just about good on time, but before we go, can you tell us a little bit about, tell anyone who wants to be involved with Indie Biz Pass or any entrepreneurs, what should they know, how can they get connected?
So again, if you go to the www.indiebizpass.com, so much information. Right now, well, based on the funding and what we're winding down, the Indie Biz Pass, because it was a two-year initiative, and we have 260 businesses as a part of it. So we have a lot of businesses that are trying to get in. So right now we're looking to just say, do we continue the co-working space access? But we have a bench of probably 150 that didn't get in, right? And then the 260 that are in it are not trying to get out. So that's what we're thinking about right now and trying to see, do we continue that and do that? But for the other side of the Indie Biz Pass, as far as organizations being able to share the resources they have, there's so many organizations that we haven't reached because there are a lot of organizations doing good work. So we want all of those organizations, if they email info@indiebizpass.com, our ecosystem manager, Framer, does an unbelievable job. We'll educate them, onboard them, give them whatever information they need, so now they're part of the virtual ecosystem. When you become part of the virtual ecosystem, you have access to your own website. The techies call it your own node, right? Where you can go in, update your programs, but now all of the businesses in the network get a chance to see it.
Wow. It's a virtual, literally a virtual hub.
It is.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for tuning in. Do not forget to like and follow on social media and subscribe to the IAAQLI newsletter. We'll be back. See you next time. Coming up, hear from another IAAQLI awardee and learn more about the impact and work being done in our community. And don't forget, subscribe to our podcast and visit the IAAQLI website and learn more about the work being done and ways to get involved. Welcome back to the IAAQLI 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we highlight the impactful change that is happening in our community thanks to the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative. On this segment, we have Deandra Thompson, who is the founder of A Learning Bee STEM Pre-K Academy, an innovative early learning center committed to giving young children, especially African American children, a strong foundation in science, technology, engineering, and math. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us just a little bit more? I gave kind of like a brief synopsis, but can you give us a little bit more about the history of A Learning Bee Pre-K STEM Academy? That's a mouthful, but I love it.
And we could just say a Learning Bee Academy. That's pretty much what we're known for, or STEM Pre-K. And yeah, it was motherhood that really inspired me to create a Learning Bee Academy. We started in 2017, and I was a new mom, and I actually was able to stay home with my son for about almost a year before we started a Learning Bee, and just really enjoyed that time. And so I wanted to keep going, and turns out there's some other moms who's similar to me, and so we worked with the church and was able to create a space for moms just like me who wanted to make sure their kids were learning in a great learning environment, building their curiosity, and building on those concepts that you just in traditional preschools weren't doing for our children. And so 9 years later, here we are.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your focus on STEM? Mm-hmm. When you hear that word, for me, it gets a little scary. It seems like that's something, I'm thinking engineer, I'm thinking high school, I'm thinking college, but you have decided to teach it at a pre-K level. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the STEM concepts is just really building on our students, our children's natural curiosity at this age. From 0 to 5 is like the most critical age in development for children. And so when we are talking about science, we're talking about just a hands-on approach to learning, where we're meeting kids where they're at, whether they're 2 or 5, they are digging in dirt and we're asking questions, right? So now they're thinking, and we're building those cognitive skills for 5 years. And so what's great about teaching STEM is now, by the time they're in school, not only are they kindergarten ready, but they are critical thinkers. And that, to me, is one of the most important things. And also, we've developed a great relationships with adults. So also, a lot of people don't talk about that in early childhood, but that is the most critical piece during those years, is positive relationships with adults. So our teachers are down in the ground, digging with our kiddos, talking to them, constantly asking questions. So again, when they're out of our hands and into school, they are having positive relationships, they're curious about learning, and they're thinking before they react, and they have great social emotional development as well. And so when they're in school, they know, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm excited about learning. And that, to me, is the secret sauce, if you will, of what we do at a Learning Bee.
That's awesome. And they're learning that so early. And like you said, at that age, they're just a ball of curiosity.
Yes.
So for you to be able to mold that is really cool. Can you tell us a little bit, what is a day at Learning Bee Academy? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have morning circle. Our students come in and we are gathering them up. We have thematic monthly themes for our students where we are really digging in on the things that are around them. So we're not having, silly monster day. We're talking about dinosaurs and triceratops and all those things. What do dinosaurs eat? So some of these things I didn't even learn until elementary school, deep in elementary school, that our kids are getting exposure to now, fossils, those things. So we build our morning circle around our theme and discussion about that. We get to hear what do they think about it. And then we might do a community challenge game on the theme. And then our students, our teachers are really good about preparation and preparing our classrooms ahead of time and putting stations out that are centered around the theme. So if we're talking about butterflies and bees in the science station, they may have the life cycle of a butterfly, and they'll talk through that. At the math station, they'll build a caterpillar and let's measure it. And then creative station, they'll maybe have some arts and craft supplies out there, and they'll create their own mosaic butterfly. So they'll spend about 25 to 30 minutes in rotations on that, and then we go outside, we eat lunch. Our kids, they're fed really well. We have a cook on staff that does really good. He used to work for Eskenazi Health for a while, and so we're really blessed to have him on board that cooks nutritious meals for our students. And then in the afternoon is a student choice. So we continue to have our stations out and maybe add a few more, and then our students get to explore and decide which station they want to be at. And those are student-led, and our teachers are observers of the play, if you will. So it's play, but very structured style. And then, our students go off home for the day, and then we start all over the next day.
That's awesome. And I heard you're measuring, you're learning about different animals and the life cycle of a caterpillar to a butterfly. So they're learning all these scientific things so young.
Yes.
I can only imagine when they get to third grade or something, they're like, oh, wait, I know this. So,
oh, man. So my son is 8 now, and so I see all the things that the Learning Bee teachers, I wish I could take all the credit, but I really can't. His teachers at Learning Bee, I still see the impact on him today, because he does go, I know about pollinators, and we're learning about chickens, Mommy, and all these things. And so I'm like, oh, wow, what we're doing actually works. So.
And it just shows that even though they are at that younger age, they retain so much. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Can you tell us switching gears a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about how the families in the surrounding community have response to this program?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, motherhood was really the start for me. So we started out with 5 moms that lived in my neighborhood at the time, and just said, hey, we're going to support you, and we know you're great at what you do. Let's support. And then those 5, that was 2017, November 2017. By January 2018, we ended up having 50 children. And then 2019, 90, and then 2022, where we got the grant, we were serving about 110 children at that time. And so we were really, strapped for space. So we were able to we've been partnering with schools, and so now our pre-K program is inside of schools now. Actually, we're expanding to 3 schools right now, and then we are able to expand our community-based program inside of churches to 2. We just opened our second site on that last week. So
That's amazing. Growing, it just proves the success and when the snowball effect in a way
Yes.
about how you teach one and then they teach others and you keep building and building. That's amazing. What changes have you seen in the students since implementing the kind of STEM approach? Are they more curious? Or are they what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think our biggest flex, like I like to try to
Yes,
stay young.
Yeah, show the big flex. I like it.
Our biggest flex is that our kids are really mastering what they're learning. And so it's not just my son, it's almost all the children that I speak with, all the parents are saying the same things. Like, oh, Miss D, when they were in Learning Bee, like they got exposed to so much. Now school is easy for them. They know how to control emotions. They know how to work in a team, right? Because they got exposed to that. And that's just the biggest thing that I think, you know, that we just didn't count for, that this was going to be, I mean, we know we're going to teach them well and that they're going to be great at school, but the social and emotional piece, like that, building on those things was, like I said, the secret sauce. And our kids really do master what they're learning. They're not just memorizing, they're really know what they're talking about when they go to school and they're having discussions on the same topics.
That's awesome. And you serve predominantly African American students. So how much of a bigger flex is that to feel knowing that not only are you preparing leaders, you're preparing children who are curious about learning and excited about learning, but also these are African American students.
Yes, these are our babies. And so, yeah, it's a special place in my heart. And our kids are, it's interesting because they end up going to in clusters, right, to certain schools too. And so it's easy to follow them. And a lot of time, or what we've seen in the data is like 75% are testing in high ability, 100% have passed the I-read test and math test and second grade, so they don't have to take it in third grade. 100% are going into kindergarten. So these are the things that when we follow our students, that it's like, okay, we really need to tell this story because they're not just having fun and love learning, like they're actually really mastering those core pieces that create like lifelong learners in our students.
That's awesome. Switching gears just a little bit, how has the IAAQLI funding helped you grow and sustain this work so that you do have 100% I-read success and a transition from grade to grade?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, like the community partnerships, building on what we're doing and expanding that into different parts of the community. We were, before the grant, we were in our own little corner on the west side, like I said, serving about 90 kids. And then after the grant, we're now at the capacity to serve 300 students. Yeah,
Wow.
so we doubled our capacity
Yeah,
from the grant.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
so that's fruitful, and just makes me proud that we're going to be able to have such an impact on children going into school.
Yes, and children in the futures to come. I love that. For early learning providers who may not have access to this kind of support, what would you tell them about the importance of investing in Black-led early education?
Oh, it's so important because the grant also, for me, it was like the first time I felt like it was the first time that there was intentional investments in our community. And so, I think it's so important to continue the advocacy. So if it's a passion, it started out as just being a mom, but then it turned into this passion and a journey to really create change in our community. And so if anyone's like me, I would just encourage you to just continue to advocate for if it's early childhood, if it's just having access to programming for children. But if you really believe in what you're doing, just continue to create space and create advocacy for it. People say, oh, you forced me to do this a lot to me. And it is true, like I do, because I'm so passionate that this is the work that's gonna elevate our community, so.
Yes, and we're only as bright as our future.
Yep.
And we're investing in our future by investing in a Learning Bee Academy. I love that. What is your vision for a Learning Bee Academy over the next few years? Like, what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, so I could just continue to create access for our families, for more families to understand how important it is to invest in early childhood and putting your kids in an early preschool, early childhood care space. And then also, I have a passion for just creating pathways for educators in the, because there's, I always tell people there's a cap in early childhood because of what is coming in, the funding that's coming in from the state. But I believe with all my heart, early childhood educators make the best elementary school teachers. So if we can, in our partnerships with schools, create career pathways, which we have, and I want to continue to do that so that we can create a funnel for great educators. And because our city, we need more great educators.
We do. We really do. What can the community do to support? How can we help?
Okay, yeah, great question. So I'm always willing to meet with anyone. Shoot us an email, dthompson@mylearningbee.org. Call me, 317-238-3978. I'd love to I'm having coffee chats with different members in the community, so you could just email me and say, hey, I want to have some coffee, and we could sit down and chat about anything, really.
Awesome. Last thing before we go, what do you want people to understand about the power of early STEM, implementing STEM at an early age?
Yes, so STEM to me is so important because not only are you building those cognitive skills that we just talked about, but career-wise, exposing them this early to just what a STEM career could look like. I mean, we all know that, STEM careers tend to be the most lucrative jobs coming even straight out of college or high school even. And so I always lean on my brother. My brother worked in technology right out of high school. He did go to college, but he, makes a lot of money. I'll tell all his business, but and so without having a whole lot of education, and now you're changing the achievement gap, the opportunity gap for your families. And so that's really, to me, this outside of the social, emotional, and cognitive skills, that's like the second most important thing that I stress on our teachers, to expose our students at that age to careers, even through play. Even if it's just through play, we're exposing you to these careers because it's a game changer. These are the careers that are game changing for families and really can, just basically cut the poverty gap, right? So super important.
And it starts as young as one.
Right, exactly.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to the IAAQLI 6 Pillars in Action newsletter. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.
We hope you enjoyed today's 6 Pillars in Action podcast and learned more about how the IAAQLI funding is impacting our city. And remember, to stay up to date on what's happening with IAAQLI and the 6 Pillars in Action, subscribe to the podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also check out the 6 Pillars in Action newsletter, blogs, and other videos on our website at IAAQLI.org. Until next time, let's continue to celebrate the power of transformation. See you next time.